Good evening, good day, and welcome to Channel 977's 19th new fall season of This Week at the Lake, the news and feature show about people and events of interest to Lake Monticello. On behalf of the LMOA Broadcast Group, I'm Ron Krause. We're broadcasting from the High and Muriel Badler studio located in the clubhouse. Our special guest today is Harold Wright, a longtime resident of Lake Monticello. He has been instrumental in forming the marvelous station to which you are presently tuned. He has a distinguished half-century career in broadcasting and is the founder and still long-running general manager of NBC TV 29 in Charlottesville. Harold Wright, it's an absolute delight to have you with us.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
I think this is one of those things we can say it's overdue. I'm going to throw you a straight line here before we get semi-serious.
Okay.
With all of the broadcasting, basically, I hate notoriety because that means the bad term, but all of the plaudits to which you are entitled. You refer to yourself, you think you're better known for something else.
Well, I'm better known for being Angel Husted's husband.
That's it.
I'm often called Mr. Husted.
Okay, that's the one.
I answer to either one.
All right. Well, we'll delve into that a little bit down the line. As we say, you were a long-time resident, and we'll double back here. You apparently attended a formation meeting or an information meeting, whatever, about what Lake Monticello might look like back when?
I think it was 1968 that I was living in Charlottesville and working in radio at that time. And I don't remember how I got invited, but they had a formation meeting where they invited people to come to dinner at the Aberdeen Barn to tell folks about this wondrous new lake that they were going to build in Fluvanna County, and they were attempting to generate interest in purchasing property out here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, tell that few years to before it actually came into being, but
and there was a hurricane along the way.
That certainly did. That certainly did the trick. We'll
Yes.
get back there. But even though you were there then, you're not a Virginia native.
No, I'm from. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a Georgia boy.
How did you get here to the Commonwealth?
When I was 17 years old, my dad, who was part of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare of the U.S. government at the time, he was transferred to the division headquarters, which at that time was in Charlottesville. So my final year of high school was at Albemarle High School.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah. I didn't want to leave Georgia.
No, okay.
No high school kid who's going into his last year and plays football on the football team wants to leave his friends.
Absolutely.
I had no choice.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. And so you continued, once you graduated, you continued.
Yeah, well, my
stayed
father
there.
then said, because I had always planned to go to Georgia Tech, I was going to be a rambling wreck. I knew I wanted to be an electrical engineer. And my father said, we have a fine university right here in Charlottesville. So I became a Cavalier.
Okay, all right. And basically here you are ever since.
Yes, I
mean,
have.
so
I've spent my entire career in Central Virginia.
Yeah. Oh, radio started in college?
Yes, I guess I had been, I was probably second year at the university. And my roommate was involved in the student radio station. So he invited me to come down one Sunday night and see what goes on. Now you must remember that in those days, the early 1960s, there were no girls at UVA. It was a male institution.
That's right.
Not quite true, there were none. You could come as a woman in your second year and later, but there weren't many. There was one in engineering school. So I went down to the station, and lo and behold, there were women there. So suddenly I was I was interested in college radio. I got involved in the college radio station. They gave me a job being a DJ on their Sunday night show, which was called Route 78. They had a bunch of old 78 RPM records, and I was given the task for an hour to play Tommy Dorsey, Jimmy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, Paul Whiteman.
All right.
I didn't know much about that music. I was a rock and roller, but I learned.
All right.
And I found it to be a lot of fun.
Okay. So what led you to continue that after graduation?
Well, it actually started out before graduation. I was in engineering school, and along the way they discovered their chief engineer graduated. It was a student-run station, all students.
Okay.
And their chief engineer graduated, and they're looking around for who knows how to fix a transmitter. And someone said, well, Harold Wright over there is in engineering school. He ought to be able to do it. So I said, well, that's interesting, but what's the incentive for me wanting to do this? And they had told me I had to go to Washington and pass the exam for a first-class radio telephone license to be the chief engineer. And so one of the people piped up and said, you can get into the women's dorm anytime you want to, because that's where the transmitters are. So I said, well, there's an incentive. So I got the license and was the radio station's chief engineer for a couple of years. Oh. But that license also led to my commercial radio career, because since I was a disc jockey at the student station and I had an engineering license as a result of going to Washington and getting it, the local radio station, WCHV, said, hey, we'll give you a job. You can be a combo man. In that day and time, radio stations had to have not only an announcer, but they had to have an engineer on duty. Mm-hmm. And if the announcer had an engineer's license, they paid one guy to do two guys' work. Yeah. So that led to my career in commercial radio.
For heaven's sakes. Do they, touching on that, just the question pops into my mind. Do stations, either radio or television, still have to maintain a person at the transmitter as they used to? And I didn't think so.
The equipment is much more automated than it was in those days. We had giant tubes that glowed in the dark inside transmitters in that day and time. Yeah. Now, of course, we have transistors or other things made of silicone.
Yeah, okay. So you graduate with it was your degree in electrical engineering, so here you are, and you've got your FCC license. And did you plan to pursue a career in radio at that time?
Well, you know, I was very young, and I guess I was 18, 19, no, I was 21. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, on Friday nights, I was the color man on the high school football broadcasts. Great. And for a young guy who was interested in electronics and radio, it was great fun to be a broadcaster. So I said, well, I'll do this for a year. And then it became 2 years, and then it became 3 years. And ultimately, I have made my career as a broadcaster.
How did it develop commercially here in Charlottesville?
Well, for about 3 years, I worked for WCHV. And then a friend I had made who was the general manager of the Paramount Theater at that time. Now, the Paramount in those days showed movies. Yeah. It was a movie theater. Yeah. And he was a friend of mine. He was a few years older than I was. But he had been a newscaster in television in North Carolina in an earlier career. And so he and I got to talking about a virtually bankrupt radio station in the community that could be purchased for very little money. And so long and short of it is, the president of the National Bank and Trust Company, which today is Wells Fargo, The president of National Bank and Trust Company agreed to back us in purchasing this bankrupt radio station. It was a daytime station. Back in those days, there were stations that just operated from dawn to dark.
Sun up, sundown, yeah.
And we were in the radio business and our own bosses.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's pretty heady stuff for a young
young
guy.
guys. It was great.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, how did it go? If you could buy a station that's nearly, that's teetering, let's say.
Right. Well, what the people who owned the radio station didn't know, it had for most of its life been a classical AM station, which in a college town is a terrible format. Just before we purchased the station, they changed the format to rock and roll. Now, this is 1965. What's the most popular music group in America in 1965? The Beatles. And they were playing classical music. But when they switched to rock and roll, there was a radio survey 3 months after we purchased the station. We were #1 in the market because we were the only station in the market playing rock and roll in a college town.
And you look like heroes.
Yeah, no, we looked pretty smart, but we weren't. We were lucky.
And you rescued, and you turned the finance.
We knew how to sell advertising, and that's the lifeblood of any broadcast facility is advertising. Yeah. And so we were very successful. 3 years later, we were able to buy out the banker who had financed us, and we were on our own.
Well, that's great. Yeah. Well, what led now to video?
Well, in 1969, we were feeling pretty proud of ourselves. We were the #1 station in the market. Business was good. The market did not have a TV station. All the television in Charlottesville came from Richmond or Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So we decided the town needed a television station, and we were just the guys to bring the TV station to town. In fact, after all, what is television? It's just radio with pictures, right? That's not right.
No,
but that's
right.
what we thought because we were radio guys.
Yeah, that's the old line.
Yep. So we went to Washington, D.C. We applied for the license. I filled out the paperwork, and I was an engineer, so I filled out the engineering work. And the FCC granted us a construction permit on Channel 29. And we started going around to our radio advertisers to see if they would invest in this new TV station we wanted to put on the air. Unfortunately, our advertisers were not interested in being in our business. They were interested in buying advertising on our business. So we were very unsuccessful in raising the money. And so we had that construction permit, I guess, for 2 years, and had about given up when we became friends with some lawyers in town who had experience in setting up entrepreneurial companies, new corporations. And within 2 weeks, I think, after they got involved, we had a couple of meetings. We had the 29 stockholders with their money invested to build the station. You have to work with the right people. Yeah. We were broadcasters. We knew nothing about business.
Yeah. I was going to ask, when you mentioned that it's 29 stockholders, and I say, oh, well, that's where the Channel 29 comes from, but you've already said that's a frequency assigned by the FCC.
That's right. The FCC had just assigned that channel to the city of Charlottesville.
Just coincidental.
The reason we had 29 stockholders is if you had 30 stockholders, you had to register as a public corporation.
Oh, okay.
And we didn't want to go through that.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah. So then, how did you get a TV station? You've got the license. Now you've got some money.
Well, back in those days, TV stations typically did 2 half-hour newscasts a day. They ran I Love Lucy and Make Room for Daddy and ancient programs of that sort. the rest of the programming, which broadcast day for most TV stations then was from about 6:30 a.m., sometimes 7 a.m., until the Johnny Carson show went off,
right, yeah.
which was 12:30. That was the broadcast day. So 13 hours of our broadcast day was network programming. So it was essential that you have a television network, or otherwise you couldn't afford to program the TV station. And unless you had a TV network, nobody would watch anyway.
Yeah.
So we made application to ABC, to CBS, and to NBC. CBS did not even grant us a meeting. They weren't interested. They
Bill Paley didn't want to.
No, Bill Paley. Very good. You knew Bill Paley. Bill Paley did not want to grant us an audience. ABC did grant us an audience. We had a big meeting in one of their conference rooms. The only reason they granted us an audience is their director of affiliate relations, about a year before we went to visit them, had been caught selling affiliations, which was a no-no, putting the money in his pocket. And so they had a very formal system of application, and they had no choice but to give us, under this formal system, an audience. They gave us an audience, and a week later they told us no. NBC was our last hope, and we made application to NBC. NBC, the affiliate manager at NBC, invited us up to his office. We sat around a coffee table, just the affiliate manager, my partner of those days, Bob Stroh, and I. We met with the affiliate manager, and he listened to our story. We gave him all our paperwork, told him what a wonderful market it would be for NBC, and we came home. A month went by, and we were back in New York for another reason. We hadn't heard anything. So we just showed up at 30 Rock, and of course there was a security guard at the bottom desk, and he called up and said, "There are these two guys here to see you, but they don't have an appointment." And he says, "All right, send them up." And we walked into his office, and he says, "You have come to see me without an appointment." And you know what? I would have done the same thing. You have your affiliation.
How about that?
So
all right.
From there on, it was hard work, but we had a network affiliation.
Yeah. If I may ask, but you now, getting the network affiliation, but where do you get a television station? I mean,
you can, if you have lots of money, you just go out and buy the equipment. If you have the ability to buy all new equipment, I suspect you could put, in that day and time, you could put a TV station on the air for $3 million, maybe $4 million, something in that neighborhood. We didn't have that much money. We had $600,000. So it had to be something cheaper. So we discovered a bankrupt TV station, a bankrupt UHF station in Raleigh, North Carolina. Excuse me, it was in Greensboro. Greensboro, North Carolina. And RCA Corporation, which had loaned them or sold them all the equipment that they went bankrupt over, was putting on an auction. And RCA said, "Now, if you want to get some fairly new equipment, go down there and buy it at auction." So I took 3 Ryder trucks, went to Greensboro, North Carolina, bought everything at auction. The other people who were at the auction were only interested in tables and chairs and desks. They didn't care about the TV equipment. So I bought the TV equipment for pennies on the dollar. We dismantled it. I took about 5 people with me. We still had the radio station, so I took about 5 people from the radio station with me. We dismantled the entire TV station, transmitter and everything, loaded it into those Ryder trucks, brought it to Charlottesville, and reassembled it on Carter's Mountain.
For heaven's sake.
We signed on the air March 11th, 1973.
How about that? And you became general manager.
Right, right.
Okay.
My partner at the time was president of the company. I was the general manager, and we struggled. I can tell anyone who wants to go into the television business from radio, TV is not radio with pictures. It is a completely different business. In fact, people who ask me these days, I'll tell them that the only thing that radio and television have in common is they broadcast from towers that have antennas.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And basically you have remained general manager. There were entreaties to have you do otherwise, but you apparently didn't want to.
No, there were some opportunities along the way, but I was having a good time.
Okay.
It's always been a lot of fun for me. I'm 74 years old. Most people would be retired by now. I've been a broadcaster for 52 years, and I cannot wait to get up in the morning and go to work.
Oh, that's great.
Because
that's wonderful.
because it's from my standpoint, it's a very exciting business. What is the news going to be today?
Yeah, that's right.
I enjoy the business immensely.
Yeah, it's the old saying.
And Angel says I can't stay home anyway.
Yeah,
she doesn't want me in her hair.
Okay, well, that's where I was going to get that. So somewhere along the line in all this, Angel Houston comes to Charlottesville to work at Channel 29.
Well, she came to graduate school.
Oh, came to graduate school.
That's right. She's a graduate of Syracuse, and she entered the graduate school. She was studying audiology, which is part of the School of Education, and she entered graduate school here. I did not know her then, but apparently she got bored with that course of study and decided she'd like to try out broadcasting. I don't know why, but she decided to try broadcasting. And she went to work for WINA Radio.
Oh, yeah.
In Charlotte.
Sure.
We were growing in television. We were brand new. I guess we'd been on the air maybe a year or less. And our program director at that time, a fellow by the name of Dick Mountjoy. Dick was a wonderful broadcaster. Unfortunately, he's passed on.
Long time at WINA.
That's right. That's right. But
I
gave him his start in broadcasting. He worked for me as my radio program director. Anyway, he hired Angel, and she came over to work at our radio station. Well, the radio and the TV were in the same building, and we shared employees. And she did the news on television for a good period of time.
Okay.
And then I guess it was 1976. Her father was in ill health, and she decided to leave broadcasting and go back to Pleasant Valley, New York, which is a little town outside of Poughkeepsie, and be with her father. So, we weren't. We became friends. She didn't like me very much, frankly, when she was first at the TV station. And I thought she was a little stuck up. So, but towards the end of her tenure, we got to know each other. And I was divorced from my first wife. And so when she went off to Poughkeepsie after a period of time, I got in contact with her and started to go visit her, and met her mother, and met her father, and things developed from there. She went on from, I guess it was about the time her father passed away, that she went back into the business, went on to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania to work for the NBC affiliate there. And then when we decided that we would get married, which was probably in 1977 we decided to get married, she moved to WWBT in Richmond as a television anchor.
Okay.
So we were married September the 23rd, 1978.
Good.
So we have an anniversary coming.
You've always remembered it. That's very good.
Right.
It keeps peace in the household.
It will be our 37th wedding anniversary.
Oh, God bless.
And we got married in in Pleasant Valley, New York. It was a wonderful wedding that her mother put on. Then we were trying to decide, well, the story is basically I worked in Charlottesville, she worked in Richmond. Where were we going to live? So we agreed we'd find a place halfway between Richmond and Charlottesville. Mm-hmm. In 1978, there's not much but rabbits halfway between Richmond and Charlottesville. So Angel's looking in the newspaper and she says, "What is this little place called Lake Monticello out in Fluvanna County?" I said, that's a mud hole. I remember going to their first get-together. I said, there's nothing out there. Well, let's go look at it. So we came out here to look at it in 1978, about, I guess it was 10 days before we were to get married. And she was getting ready to go off to New York to get ready for the preparations for the wedding. And Barbara McDonald and her husband Don were the leading salespeople of property at Lake Monticello at the time. And so I was amazed. The place had paved roads. I had been here once, sometime in the early 70s, and there were no paved roads at that time, and the lake wasn't full at that particular time. So Barbara took us around to look at some of the available houses. There were about 150 homes here. Only about half of them were occupied year-round. Most of them were summer homes. Yeah. So we had a lot of summer homes we could rent to see if we liked living here. We looked at 2 or 3 and we weren't happy with any of them. So she says, well, there is this house, but it's really expensive that I can take you to look at. So she takes us down to what was known then as the Mailer House on Ivy Court, at the end of Ivy Court. And when she opened the door, the house was just gorgeous. The Mailers were a Washington, D.C. couple, and Bob Mailer had been one of the Watergate attorneys. Oh, wow. Worked for a big firm up there, and they had built a summer home down here, but they were willing to rent it year-round. So we walked through it, and it was gorgeous. Angel, I was putting my hands on her shoulders to keep her from getting too excited. Yeah. So I finally said to Barbara, I said, you said it was expensive. How much does this place rent for? And Barbara said, well, Harold, it's $800 a month. Then I had to put my hands on both her shoulders again to keep her down. So we ended up renting the Mailer House, and we lived there for 2 years until we bought and in the meantime, Angel left the broadcast business, went into real estate. She could not stand the drive into the sun every morning. Both ways, she was driving into the sun to Richmond. Yeah, it's so deadly. That only lasted 3 months, and so she got a real estate license, went into the real estate business. Oh, gosh. And we ultimately, in 1977, I think it was, bought a lot at Lake on the end of Pinecrest Court. That's where we built our home in 1980. I think we moved in 81. Mm-hmm. And we've lived there ever since. In fact, we've lived at the lake since we got married. When we were trying to decide where to go on our honeymoon, she was so in love with the Mailer House and the location. She says, let's honeymoon at Lake Monticello.
Yeah, it's just a couple of blocks down the line here from the clubhouse right here.
So we honeymooned at Lake Monticello.
How about that? Yeah. Well, with 150 houses and you say 70, well, roughly half occupied full time. Life had to be kind of lonely here at the lake.
No, it was not. We loved life at Lake Monticello. Every Wednesday night, the clubhouse here over in what used to be the tavern bar.
The pub.
The pub. Right,
yeah.
The pub. They would have sandwiches available. And most of the year-round people, at least half of the year-round people who lived here were retired military. There were lots of captains and colonels and whatnot. Even a general lived here. General Bruce Clark lived in Lake Monticello. Okay. And so we would all gather over there, and we'd eat sandwiches, we'd tell stories, and the most fun part was one of our group was pretty good on the piano, and we'd sing songs. We'd sing old songs. We'd sing military songs. It was whatever anyone wanted to sing, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice spirit of camaraderie.
It was. The community really had a spirit, and then Friday nights there would be other things down here. On Sundays there was champagne for Sunday brunch. As I remember, it cost $7.99 for Sunday brunch.
Okay.
$8.99 with all you could drink champagne.
Oh my Lord!
I am convinced that the reason we have 4 children was we came down here every Sunday.
Something else. In the somewhere along the line, then in the 80s, basically you got involved when I guess they were bringing cable TV out here to the lake, and it was the Adelphia company.
The cable company in those days in Charlottesville was Adelphia Cable, and Adelphia Cable, when it went into financial difficulty, was purchased by Comcast. But in those days, it was Adelphia, and the general manager of Adelphia Cable was an old broadcast friend of mine. He, like me, had been a radio broadcaster, and he had switched to cable television, and he ran the Adelphia systems in Charlottesville and in the Shenandoah Valley at that time. So the lake was taking bids to build a cable system here, and I was on the committee. I don't remember how I got on the committee. Maybe it was because of what I did for a living. And I called Joe and I said, there are 2 or 3 people going to bid on this system. One of them has never been in the cable business before, and I'm not comfortable with him. And then one other has been involved with a little cable system in Martinsville. I said, but you guys are the pros in town. Would you be interested in bidding for our franchise? And he said, sure. So he came out, he made a presentation. The committee that I was part of thought that his was the most professional presentation. He promised, and they did, to build out the entire lake, every home at the lake, all the streets. No one else was willing to do that up front, but Adelphia was. So that's how cable got built.
Well, that's something, and you went on from there apparently and were very instrumental in helping the other group of guys who were forming the original broadcast communications committee or group.
Well, there was a fellow named Tony Pignoni. Tony's passed on now, but Tony was he sold broadcast equipment for Panasonic Corporation, and I had some Panasonic broadcast equipment. So before Tony and his wife, Marilyn, I believe, ever moved to Lake Monticello, I knew Tony. And so when he started the group, as far as I'm concerned, he and Hy Badler, I guess. Hy Badler was a CBS person, a CBS engineer, if I remember.
VP engineering for many years, yes.
So they were doing this, and Tony said to me, he says, Harold, I know all about the TV equipment. I can take care of that, but I've never directed a television show in my life. He said, would you help us? So I helped them come down and put together the first, I think I did 3 or 4, directed 3 or 4 of their first board of directors shows that they did. And then I quietly moved on because, it's what I do every day of the week. I didn't want to come home and have to do it at Lake Monticello. But by that time, a number of people had been trained to be able to do the job. So,
fortunately, some camera. Marty Murphy was a long time also CBS guy, and he knew audio, which that was really the start, and we're coming along to today. They're people may have noticed a hiccup or two along the line and the transition now to really totally new digital equipment. So we're getting there, folks. But the learning curve is fairly steep, actually. I think we find that. But
well, if everyone has hiccups, and our most memorable hiccup was the Sunday afternoon, we signed the TV station on the first time. Now, we had in our little studio, which wasn't a lot larger than your studio here in Charlottesville, we had built the station in an old shoe store, not where it's located now, but on what was Main Street in Charlottesville then. And we had invited the mayor, the members of city council, the board of supervisors, the 5th district, no, we were in the 7th district then, the 7th district congressman to come cut the ribbon for our new television station. 5 minutes before the ribbon cutting, the transmitter failed. And we were off the air.
Oh.
We could not get it back on the air until 8 o'clock in the evening, and that was 4 o'clock.
Oh.
So we had to tape the ribbon cutting and everything that was said, and then play it back later.
Dear.
So everybody has those problems.
Oh boy, oh boy. Well, you've gone on from there to, I think really it's safe to say, become the acknowledged leader in the market, in the
Well, I'm the oldest one these days.
Well, I think
everybody else has either gone to another business or gone to their reward.
Yeah, but as far as the station's concerned, I think basically it's people, at least people around here, I think for the most part are tuning in 29.
Well, we hope so.
You've had great stability of staff, great continuity, which I think helps. People get to know the weather forecast or the newscasters over the years. And
that's an important thing to us is stability in the anchors. Now, a lot of the reporters, they're young and they come and they go, and it's the nature of the broadcast business.
Yeah.
People are always moving around in our business. If you're a broadcaster, you can get a job in any city in America. It may not pay much, but you can get a job in any city in America. But we work very hard to keep the anchor folks, because we want them to become part of the community, to know the community, and most of all, to learn how to pronounce the names. We don't want people saying Crozet.
That's right. That's right. Or Rio Road. Right. What do you worry about? What keeps you up at night?
Well, like I said, I can't wait to go to work in the morning, so broadcasting doesn't keep me up at night. If after 52 years of doing it, I haven't learned how to do it, then we are fortunate enough to be supported by the advertising community, and they support us well. Our ratings are very good, so we don't have to worry about beating our heads against the wall to generate television ratings, which is the lifeblood of a TV station. But it's a business that is changing every day. I wrote down things that have happened. As I said, we signed on in 1973. In 1987, we sold to Waterman Broadcasting Corporation, which is now our owner. I'm no longer part of the owning group of the station. I'm still the general manager, but I work for Bernie Waterman, who lives in Fort Myers, Florida. He's 20 years older than I am. So I tell Bernie he celebrated his 94th birthday last week, and I was down there with him. And I tell him he's my idol. I'm working towards 94.
Absolutely.
But in 2004, we were the first high-definition television station in Central Virginia. And then in 2007, we were the second high-definition local news station in the state.
Really?
So we have worked very hard to stay on the cutting edge of all technology. The only station that beat us, and they beat us by 2 weeks, was the NBC affiliate in Roanoke. Managed to get their HD cameras installed 2 weeks before we got
Oh,
ours installed.
oh,
So
okay.
they beat us.
Okay.
They beat us. But you ask what concerns me. Broadcast stations, all of them, are federally licensed. We all owe our existence to Congress, which passed the Communications Act of 1934, and then to their enforcer, the FCC.
Mm-hmm.
And the Federal Communications Commission controls our licenses. Without those licenses, we don't exist. And we are concerned, especially now, that the FCC is not the independent agency of the government it was set up to be in the first place. In 1934, their primary job was to give out the licenses and make sure people didn't interfere with each other, that you stayed on your frequency and didn't get on somebody else's frequency, or that you didn't build stations on the same frequency too close together. Unfortunately, today, the FCC is not the independent agency it once was. The way it's set up, there are 5 commissioners. 3 of them are of the party in power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one, the chairman, is also appointed by the President of the United States. So today, whatever the party in power decides the FCC should do, they pretty much do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're staring at a lot of changes. For instance, next March, the government, the FCC, has decided, and this is on congressional authority, that they are going to repack the television band. Right now, the television band goes from Channel 2 up to Channel 51. They want to take channels 32 to 51 away from the broadcast industry.
Really?
And make us squeeze our channels down into 2 through 31. I'm on Channel 32. I know we say Channel 29, but that's a virtual channel. I'm actually on 32. What's going to happen is the government is going to conduct an auction, and they're going to try to talk as many broadcasters as they can into selling their channel back to the U.S. government, and either go off the air or share a channel with someone else, or move down to channel 2 through 6 or 7 through 13. So there's going to be a great upheaval. Now, most people, of course, between 85 and 90% of all people watch via either satellite or cable.
Mm-hmm.
So most people won't be affected by that. But it's going to have a tremendous effect on our industry. And depending who's on which party occupies the executive branch next year, it could be that auction goes forward or that auction could end.
Yeah.
You know, the Democrats want our channels back. You know what they want to do with our channels?
No.
Give them to the cellular telephone industry.
Oh.
Well, sell them to the cellular
Oh.
telephone industry. They don't want to give them to, they want to sell
Yeah.
them to.
Yeah.
So that they'll have more channels to operate cell telephones. So we go through a lot of upheaval, and that does cause us to be concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
My hope is I'm going to do this, if my health holds out, I'm going to do it another 5 years. I hope we can stay on Channel 29 another 5 years, and then it's some young guy's responsibility.
Okay. Well, we share that hope. We share that hope with you, and we want to thank you for sharing your life and your career and your times here at
May I
Lake
say one more
Monticello
thing?
with us, of course.
My wife would be very upset with me if I didn't say something about her business, because she's opening a new location tomorrow. Angel, when she left the real estate business, she decided to go into the dance and aerobics business. And so for, I think, the past 19 years, she has operated Angel's Lifestyles and Dance at 7 Center Court over across the street from the from the fire station. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I believe it is, I think I'm right about that, at 4 o'clock, she is cutting the ribbon on her new location, which is twice as large as her present location. And so Angel's dance studio will be operating from 19 Center Court, beginning in the future. So,
well, good for her, and there's no question. Angel is basically one of the high-level, high-energy fixtures here of Lake Monticello. Everybody basically knows Angel from dance and from aerobics. 2 times in the Guinness Book of World Records,
right.
I believe, for tap. We've had the pleasure of doing a couple of shows anyway, not 2 or 3, with Angel, and she's marvelous and has done, as most people know, has brought some tremendous good out of some tremendous your and hers personal tragedy. And that is something for which there are more points than one can express. So wish her our best, and we wish you our best. We thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Ron.
We've been talking with Harold Wright, the founder and general manager of NBC TV 29 in Charlottesville. We hope that you will join good old Channel 977 again next week for another This Week at the Lake, when there will be a discussion about all of the activities and upcoming festivities of Fluvanna County's approaching Old Farm Day. It's always a favorite. We think you'd like to hear about it. So we remind you that these programs are broadcast all over the lot. It's about 4 times daily. Please check the website for the LMOA calendar. You'll get the exact times, and for other programming that also appears here on 977 during the day and during the evening. So, on behalf of the LMOA broadcast group, I'm Ron Kraus. Thank you very much for watching, and good day.